Welcome to Moments with Marilyn. I'm your host, Marilyn Boyer, the mom of 14 homeschool kids who love the Lord and love each other. I absolutely love young moms, and it's my passion to encourage you and to provide you with tips and tools to make your job easier. Thanks for joining us today. Today's session is about summer boredom, dealing with summer boredom. But before we begin, let me remind you that our podcast can be found on our YouTube channel, our Facebook page, Google Podcasts, and multiple other platforms as well. Today, we have Uncle Rick with us, and he is going to help us learn what to do about summer boredom. Don't you just hate it when the kids come in, Mom, I'm so bored, what can I do? Well, Uncle Rick has some answers for us. Okay, Uncle Rick, tell us what you do.
I record audiobooks for kids and some storytelling CDs also. And my books are old books because 100 years ago they wrote good books for kids instead of all the occultism and rebellion and bad attitudes, materialism and so forth that they write today. Here's one published in the 19-teens, one about one of the early Boy Scouts. Very interesting story about the early Boy Scouts in America. This is Tom Slade with the colors. So one of the scouts goes overseas to fight in World War I. Here we have Paul Revere and the Boys of Liberty. This is a true story about Paul Revere. And he did a lot more than just take a ride in the middle of the night. Squanto and the Pilgrims. Without God having sent Squanto, the Pilgrims might not have made it through their first and second winters in the New World. Fascinating story about the good relationship between the white settlers and the Indians in Plymouth, Massachusetts.
And how Squanto becomes a Christian.
And how Squanto becomes a Christian through the ministry of the Pilgrims, the people he helped. Cowboys and Cattle Trails, a book about the adventures of the Old West cowboys. A lot of fun in here, a lot of excitement. And finally, Dave Dawson on Guadalcanal. This is a series of books written by a man who had been a fighter pilot in World War I, Sidney Bowen, and he wrote some of the most realistic sounding fiction for kids. They learn a lot of history, not much for color illustrations, but that's the way the old books are. All the color is inside in the text. So we do that, do a lot of biographies, a lot of history, a lot of adventure stories, and kids love it, and they learn, and they develop some much better values than the kind of stuff they write for kids today.
Our granddaughter, Lauren, was bugging me in church Sunday for Granddad to do another Dave Dawson book. She loves the Dave Dawson series. She said, it's about time. I want Dave Dawson on the Russian front. So that's your next request.
And I heard from her again yesterday at the 4th of July celebration.
Okay, great. So there's so many choices that we have on our website. This is just a smattering, a sample. So what he does is he turns them into audiobooks. And you've got the choice of getting CDs, or you can do digital downloads, which we'll tell you more about later. But Uncle Rick, give us an example story of something from history that you teach.
One of my favorite stories comes from the biography of Francis Marion, the Swamp Fox of the Revolution. He was nicknamed the Swamp Fox by his enemies, actually, who tried to catch him, and they couldn't do it. And they said, that old fox, the devil, couldn't catch him. And so after that, Francis Marion was known as the Swamp Fox because he was a very wily fighter. He was a guy who struck at night and sometimes in the middle of the day, but always with the element of surprise on his side because he had far fewer soldiers than the British did, and so he was always fighting against uphill odds. He became very clever, very crafty, fought like the Indians did against the British, and for the most part, he was very successful. In fact, it was him and a few other partisans like him who kept General Cornwallis's army so stirred up that they couldn't march north to join with the British forces in New York and fight against General Washington, which would have been disastrous. Anyway, so there was a prisoner exchange one day. Francis Marion, the Swamp Fox, had some British prisoners. The British had some American prisoners, and it was arranged that an officer from the British Army would be brought blindfolded to Francis Marion's hiding place in the swamps of South Carolina to discuss this prisoner exchange. And so he came, and they did their business, and they arranged the exchange, And then Francis Marion said, well, Major, as long as you're here, you might as well stay for lunch with us. And so they sat down on some stumps in the clearing there, and Francis Marion's servant, Oscar, served up lunch. It was sweet potatoes, baked in the ashes of a campfire, served on slabs of wood, and accompanied with drinking water from the swamps.
Wow.
And after this, the Major was very impressed, and he said, Colonel Marion, don't you usually eat a little better than this? And Colonel Marion said, well, as a matter of fact, we often have nothing but sweet potatoes, and usually there's not as many available as we have here. And the man said, well, to fight as hard as you do and to live under such primitive conditions, sleeping on the ground, eating roots, drinking river water, you must be paid very well. And Francis Marion responded, well, actually, Major, we're not paid at all. And this British Major went back to his camp after business was all concluded, lunch was over, and he told his commanding officer, we will never defeat these Americans because they are willing to fight for no pay, living on roots and river water, and they are just dedicated to their cause. And so the story goes that he resigned his commission in the British Army and stayed and became an American.
Wow. And that's just one little incident in the life of Marion.
Oh, yeah.
He's got a whole book called Marion's Men where just the adventure that man experienced is unbelievable.
And the example that he set of both patriotism and general good character, because the British and the Tories were engaging in all kinds of atrocities against the colonists, and Francis Marion would not allow his men to do that sort of thing, regardless of what the British did.
We should maybe mention, how do you incorporate character into your stories?
Well, you know, if you've heard of the Uncle Rick recordings, you know that they're not read just like your average, ordinary audio book, because Uncle Rick likes to stop and make character applications. And if I see somebody in the story exhibiting character, well, I don't mind breaking ranks and saying, hey, little buddies, do you see that? What a great example of courage that was. Or, hey, little buddies, did you notice here how truthful this man was? He wouldn't lie no matter what. Or, hey, little buddies, did you see that? What an example of kindness that was. So these books really don't need a lot of commentary. But I take opportunities to stop and talk to my little buddies when I can. And once in a while, I'll even get out the old Webster and look up a word that either I don't know or that I think might be hard for them to understand, in order to encourage them to learn to use the dictionary while they read.
Yeah, that's great. I love that aspect.
Well, you know, audiobooks are a great way to learn vocabulary because kids will hear things read maybe at a higher level than they could comprehend reading that themselves. But they've got Uncle Rick's change of tone, voice inflection, and outright explanations of different things. So I try to read them as I used to read to my own kids and now read to my grandkids.
Yeah. Okay, so we're talking about summer boredom. How can you help these moms out here with their kids being bored?
Well, Uncle Rick's the answer to summer boredom because they can do an audio book when they do nothing else or while they do anything else. They're great for riding in the car, you know, those 4 and 5 hour vacation trips, you know, where the kids get bored. Are we there yet? I have to go to the bathroom. Well, a lot of times kids forget all about those things when they're listening to a good audio book. In fact, I have had adults tell me that they got so wrapped up in listening to Uncle Rick read a great book that they ended up at some destination other than the one they intended. One young lady was on her way to college class one morning, and she ended up at church instead because she got so wrapped up in the book. So they're great books.
They're actually for all ages, aren't they? I mean, we've heard so much feedback from adults that that one dad said that they were sitting at home in the driveway to finish the chapter before they all went to the house.
They've been listening to it in the car, and when they got home, there was still another half hour of the book to go, and they were just dying to hear what happened at the end of the book. And so the kids made them sit in the car until the book was over. But yeah, it's a great way to learn character, to have a good time, and in many of these books, to learn some real history too.
Yeah, the kids are learning so much, but they don't really realize it. It's not like they're sitting down and studying like you do in school.
Right. It just grips them. It gets their attention because it's such interesting stuff, and because it's being read by a live voice and somebody, you know, who wants to try to make the kids feel like they're right there in the little house in the pasture with Uncle Rick as he reads.
Why is it better to teach kids history through stories?
Well, you know, that's always been a popular way to teach history. People get biographized because they live in an important time of history. And it's their times that make them, the people, important. And so you can't study the life of George Washington without studying the French and Indian War, without studying the Revolutionary War, without studying early American constitutional government, because he was the first president. Same thing with Ben Franklin, Francis Marion, General Robert E. Lee. These men, Francis Scott Key wrote the Star-Spangled Banner. That's one of my very favorite books too, by the way.
Yeah, me too.
These people had biographies written about them because they were an important part of an important time in American history. And if there's anything in the world people need today in America, it's a better understanding of our own history, because we're being told today that America is a bad place, it's a racist place, it's an unjust place, and anybody who knows our history well knows that all that's not true, that we're a nation of people, people are imperfect, but that America started out as a nation that was developing freedom. And as time has gone by, we develop more and more freedom for more and more people. But you've got to understand our history to realize that.
So moms have limited time. How can you help them?
Well, you know, kids often want to be read to at times and mom's just not available. Well, Uncle Rick's always available. All you got to do is pop a CD into the recorder or listen to on a device. You know, they can purchase any of our books as audio downloads and listen to them on a cell phone or a computer or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's no need for mom to have to stop what she's doing whenever a child wants to be read to. Uncle Rick's there and he loves it.
We've had moms that let their kids listen to them at nap time, and they'll beg for longer nap times because they want to hear more stories.
Yeah, and we should point out too that a lot of Uncle Rick's recordings are books of scripture. I've got Proverbs, I've got 50 chapters of Psalms, I've got the book of James, I've got the book of Acts, and several others. And our kids have memorized more scripture by accident, so to speak, than we have on purpose. It's just a great way for them to learn scripture as well. And they're not only memorizing it, they're hearing Uncle Rick's explanations of it at the same time.
That's true. Now, I want to hear from a couple kids who are going to tell us what they like about Uncle Rick. Okay, and I have two of Uncle Rick's special little buddies with us today, and they're going to tell us what they like about Uncle Rick audios. We have James and Lainey, and we'll hear from James first.
I like Dash and Paul Jones because of how brave he was and of all the warriors he fought, and he never gave up fighting the British.
Great. Fantastic. And Lainey?
I like the story of Squanto because he taught the pilgrims how to learn to grow food and became a Christian.
Very good. When do you guys like to listen to Uncle Rick's?
I like to listen to them at night, so it will just be in my head at night.
Great. What about you, Lainey?
I like to listen to them when I take a nap. Well, I don't take a nap.
Super. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we wanted to tell you about a special offer that we have going on just until the end of the month of July. So you'll have to jump on it if you want to access it. If you tell us about the Uncle Rick Audio Club, and then I'll tell them what the special offer is.
The Uncle Rick Audio Club is the best deal going. 2 audio books of your choice downloaded each month for a membership of only $10. You don't have to sign up for a year. You can quit any time, but I don't think you'll want to because you get 2 fantastic audio books for kids. That's only $5 a piece. They're yours to keep. They don't disappear off your hard drive like a Netflix movie. Rather, they're yours to keep. You're welcome to burn them onto CDs and make copies if you wish. You got 1 copy for each kid's room at night. You got 1 copy for the car, whatever you want to use it for. Uncle Rick Audio Book Club is definitely a steal deal.
So it's Uncle Rick Audios, plural.com. And like I say, until the end of July, we've got a really special deal. If you sign up on the Uncle Rick Audio's book club site, you get $130 worth of free digital downloads. Some incredible stuff. We've got the American Adventure series of ebooks. They're out of print, but they're super. As a matter of fact, Uncle Rick was showing you Cowboys and Cattle Trails. That's one of the, I think there's 8 books that are in that series that you get free as an ebook.
Mm-hmm.
You've also got the old Cowboy Sams. You know how our kids
Oh,
love the
yeah, they
Cowboy
love
Sams
Cowboy
and our
Sam.
grandkids
Yeah.
now. We've got 12 Cowboy Sam ebooks in that offer. We also have the Uncle Rick Holiday Book, digital. Tell us what that's all about.
Well, not to mention any names, but somebody made it clear one year that every time a holiday rolled around that Uncle Rick ought to write a story about it explaining what it meant for young people. And so after a year, Uncle Rick had written enough stories to cover all the major holidays and turned it into a book. And now we have the Uncle Rick Holiday Book.
And it's got beautiful illustrations too, you know, and it's also got ideas in it to make your celebrations meaningful. So you get all that and more, $130 worth if you sign up during the month of July. The offer is going to come down August 1st, so be sure you access that. I don't think you will be sorry that you
Nope.
did.